No one could have known what had happened next.
Without the full story, it is easy to twist the narrative to anything you wish. Or better yet, create a story within a story with a twist within another twist, all of it lying at the center of the Black Mirror universe.
Monkey loves you.
You better.
That is why we're here, to learn what really happened and to understand one of the biggest twists within the entirety of the show.
There's gotta be a but.
But we can only get the full story and ensure that we don't miss anything by starting at the beginning after a long drive out to the middle of nowhere. And the long drive has left Nish's car needing to refuel, and this BRB Connect is clearly not going to be any help to her or anyone else. Luckily though, she isn't dumb enough to drive all the way out to the middle of nowhere without having a way to get back where she came from, as she pops the trunk and pulls out a solar panel to recharge her car, even if it might take her a little over 3 hours to get back on the road. It's here that she notices the building next to the gas station with a big sign on top that says Rolo Haynes Black Museum. With nothing better to do, she makes her way over to find that the door is locked because tours don't begin until 11. Though it is clear that someone is here by the car that is parked around the side. And we all get to meet the owner of the car and this establishment shortly after, when Mr. Rolo Haynes comes outside to greet Nish and all the rest of the people that are there for the tour that day. Or just Nish, who is going to get a personal tour straight from Mr. Rolo Haynes himself. The man who immediately picks up on her accent and then questions if she's from Australia, but she answers and says that she's just from the UK, causing him to wonder if she has some sort of goofy British name like Esmeralda, and she just says it's just Nish, which he admits that he can't really say anything because his name is Rolo. So looking like it's just going to be the two of them for the day, they head inside. They have to go through the whole entrance process. Nish has to hand her bag over so Rolo can check it out, and then she has to pass through a metal detector, and then they enter into the actual museum itself, with Nish saying that the whole reason she has come out here is because she is visiting her father, who lives out this way, and today just so happens to be his birthday. To which Rolo then comments about her traveling by herself and comes off as a bit old-fashioned, which causes Nish to laugh at his entire comment. Until Rolo also mentions that the dumb, smart AC is no longer working, and it is now becoming pretty hot in here. In here, where the museum is full of a lot of tech stuff.
Authentic criminological artifacts. If it did something bad, chances are it's in here.
Rolo's background is in tech, and it is the reason that he was able to acquire a lot of these pieces that he has within the museum. And that's also the reason that so much of what we see here in the museum is related to other episodes from Black Mirror. There's actually so many pieces that tie to other episodes that I know I'm going to miss some, but for example, from Season 2, Episode 2, White Bear, we have Victoria Spillane, who can be seen on one of the screens at the very entrance, and there is also a small figurine of Baxter wearing one of the mask with the whole symbol on the front from White Bear, as well as a few diagrams of Saito Gamu's mushrooms from playtest in Season 3, Episode 2, another episode I've covered. Or even the bathtub that Anon was murdered in from Crocodile in Season 4, Episode 3, as well as an ADI beneath a magnifying glass from Hated in the Nation, which is Season 3, Episode 6. And one of my personal favorites being the DNA replicator with Tommy's lollipop still on the tray that Robert Daly used in USS Callister from Season 4, Episode 1. But we will talk a lot more about all of these other episodes and how they tie into here later. For now, Rolo is worried about Nish doing what most others do when they arrive here within the museum and just run back behind the curtain to see the big attraction right away, but she reminds him that she's not in any hurry. Her car still has 3 hours before the battery is fully charged, so she's fine with just looking around and hearing all about what is here. It's with that Rolo leads her over to one of the first pieces that he acquired with this weird looking hairnet piece of tech, something that was used and connected to Dr. Peter Dawson, a name that Nish doesn't recognize, as well as the technical name of this piece of equipment, but he tells her it's the next question that most people ask that is far more interesting.
How the heck did you get that is the next question.
It's here that we get the full story about Dr. Peter Dawson, along with some of Rolo's background when he used to work in medtech at St. Juniper's in New York, where they basically offered free care to anyone that didn't have coverage, with the occasional experiment being a possibility for any of those people that take the opportunity. I mean, free coverage? But they might experiment on me? No, we can't just run off and decide that we're gonna go to this place to get treatment without hearing the rest of the story first. That's insane. You don't just go to a doctor without checking them out to see what their background is or how they've dealt with other people before. That's crazy, because as we'll see here in just a moment, Dr. Peter Dawson seems like a very well-to-do guy at first, but we will soon learn that just a couple of reviews could have saved a lot more people. If only ZocDoc existed within the Black Mirror universe. Regardless though, our sponsor does exist for us, and it's free, with no experiments attached. Doctors aren't as scary as some TV and movies make them out to be, and booking an appointment is even less scary with the help of ZocDoc, which is free. If you're anything like me, you're often too busy to try to make an appointment or even attempt to find a doctor in your area that'll actually take your insurance, and that is where ZocDoc can take that burden and help you out for free with no experiments. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/Polter to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today for free. That's ZocDoc.com/Polter, and thank you ZocDoc for sponsoring this video. Now it's clear that the hospital that Rolo worked at is very different, as he tells Nish that he worked for the guys up top. And when she asks if that's like scientist or what exactly that means, he just skips over it and tells her that he was in recruitment. This is where we first meet Dr. Peter Dawson, right in the middle of losing a patient and having to deal with all of the thoughts and regrets of what he could have done differently, until Rolo approaches him and claims that he might be able to help. They then head up to the 10th floor to Rolo's office, where Dr. Dawson is introduced to Kenny and Hector, two rats that have the same names as the main characters from Shut Up and Dance, and if you're asking me, I bet you it's on purpose, because these rats were used in an experiment where the goal was to have Kenny learn a maze by running it over and over and over again until he knows it like the back of his paw. And then they would implant this device into him and transmit all of his memories of the maze over to Hector, so that they could take Hector without him ever seeing the maze before, and he would be able to run through it no problem because of Kenny's memories. It didn't work. It was a complete failure of an experiment, all just a waste of time, until one of the scientists in the room spilled his coffee onto Kenny. Hot coffee that caused Kenny to begin rolling around screaming, and for Hector to do the exact same thing. They hadn't figured out how to share memories or thoughts, but instead physical sensations, and I still haven't figured out if the spilling of the hot coffee on Kenny was an accident or not, but what they did find that was more interesting was that Hector had no harm to his actual body. It was all just in the brain.
But how did he die?
They cut him open after to see if he was okay.
Though because of Kenny and Hector, they were able to build a prototype for humans, one that we get to see just as Rolo pulls out the one and only receiver. This receiver would then be paired with the hairnet-looking transmitter that we saw next to Nish in the case. This is why Dr. Dawson is here. No longer would he have to do so much guesswork with patients. Instead, he could just feel what they were feeling and save more people, as well as save his job, all with no physical consequences to his own body. So it's basically a win-win with no downside. We're told by Rolo that Dawson basically leapt at the chance to be the one to get this implant. After all he had to do was get a simple, irreversible procedure done, and then he could start changing his life and many others. And I just find this part of the episode interesting because we should be reminded that we are being told this story by Rolo. A story that he has likely told many other people many other times here within his museum. It's a lot like what happened in the last episode I covered with White Christmas, and is probably the reason that I like this episode a lot too. But one thing's for certain is that Rolo is a very good storyteller and salesman, because Dawson did go through with the procedure, and we do get to see how it works during his first test run. And it works great, which means that it's time for Dawson to learn how to best use it, because many of us have stubbed our toe before and we know what that feels like, but not everyone has fractured a leg or had a ruptured appendix or a kidney stone. Those are bad. Those are so bad. But Dawson, however, needs to learn what all of those feel like, so when he attaches himself to a patient, he would immediately know what they are feeling and how to treat it right away based off of his memory of physical pain. This would allow him to quickly be able to diagnose any patients, regardless of what they claimed was wrong with them, how old they are, or if they could even speak at all. He would be able to help anyone that comes in that has a physical ailment. And Dawson did. He started out small and worked his way up, gritting his teeth through all of the different kinds of pain until he became that guy within the hospital that was able to diagnose any patients, and even had other doctors relying on him to check their diagnosis. What's even cooler than that is that after some time, he reached an even higher level of understanding with all of this pain, because he began catching things that people didn't even know was an issue in their own lives. He became the doctor and saved so many people along the way. But that wasn't all, as the implant wasn't limited to just pain, but anything that could be felt physically, including pleasure. Meaning Dawson could relax and take a nice hot shower while his girlfriend got into an ice bath with the transmitter on, and then he would experience both sensations at the same time. Or Dawson could eat a bowl of vanilla ice cream while she drank a Coke, and then he would have a Coke float without ever needing to mix it. Or he could open a brand new pack of magic cards while she watches the horror movie Tumbad, and then his entire existence would transcend into the next plane because of all the dopamine.
He's having a great time, but
all it took was an emergency with a collapsed Senator Whitley. He had been at a fundraiser when it happened and then was rushed to the hospital, and no one knew what was wrong, so Dawson stepped up in an attempt to save his life. But what awaited him was a pain that he had never known, never could have imagined or even put into words, and then death. Everything went black, but eventually Dawson came back to, having experienced death itself and come out the other side unharmed. Or at least physically unharmed. You see, the senator had been poisoned and it was already far too late for him, but for Dawson, the moment the senator died, all of his synapses fired and then went out with a release of endorphins right behind, and then all of it was followed by a full stop of everything. According to all the tests that they ran on Dawson, he was completely healthy. Shaken, sure, but nothing wrong. Only the implant wasn't the same. Now pain itself was also something pleasurable to him. The worse others felt, the better he did, so he really went to work after this. He tried keeping it between him and his girlfriend at first, but it wasn't anywhere near enough as he began to push the boundaries of their relationship and abuse. Even with receiving the worst pains that he possibly could throughout the ER and taking as many extra shifts as he could, it still wasn't enough. That was until he saw her, an older woman that was brought in by the paramedics after she had gone into cardiac arrest in the street. He knew where this was all headed, but he tells everyone that he just wants to be sure. He places the transmitter onto her head and immediately recognizes this feeling. It's exactly what he has been looking for. Only it's taking too long. He stalls for time. He does everything that he can to keep everybody back, telling them that he just needs a moment to be sure until they eventually pull him away, ripping the transmitter off of the woman and beginning CPR right as she flatlines just steps away from Dawson. This breaks him and flags everyone else around to know that something is seriously wrong, which lands Dawson back in Rolo's office as Rolo explains that problems were a possibility. This is a test after all, but because of that, it's going to take time for them to figure out exactly how to fix the implant. And for now, Dawson just has to leave because those up top don't want him around any more patients.
No one could have known what had happened next.
What do you think would happen if you were to trap a junkie in a room and leave him alone for days on end, where on the TV all he watches are real-life news events, such as a woman named Denise Stockley who was found dead, the one feeling that this junkie wishes he could experience again? He's eventually going to realize that he doesn't need other people to encounter pain. Peeling fingernails off, pulling teeth, removing toes, and many cuts all over allowed Dawson to dabble with his drug of choice. And while being a doctor meant that he could patch himself up afterwards as to continue this process, he soon realized that it wasn't the same. His own pain mixed with his pleasure was missing something. Fear. The fear of death had made everyone else's pain so much better. But because he wanted to feel it so badly, all the fear had already left him. He needed that feeling. He needed someone else's pain and their fear because, as Rolo puts it, you can inflict pain on yourself, but not terror.
For that, you need a volunteer.
Though a volunteer isn't what Dawson found. Instead, after an evening of skulking around the streets, he found a homeless man, alone and perfect for an experiment, as he wastes no time in running up and tasing the man into submission, giving Dawson time to place the transmitter onto his head and pull out a drill to go straight to work. Right as the police arrive, due to the mixed screams of agony from the man and the howls of pleasure from Dawson, the police took him in, but there was nothing they could do. This final thrill ride had fried his brain and landed him in a vegetative state. To this day, he is still there in the hospital that he once worked at, with a smile permanently stretched across his face. Or at least that's how I would tell it, as it's not mentioned what hospital that he ended up in, but it does sound more interesting to have him circle all the way back to the hospital that he used to work at. But it's Rolo doing this same thing that really makes me think, as he describes an extra bit about Dawson and all the pleasure that he experienced there at the end, which Nish calls him out for. But how many other minor details did he change throughout the story to make it more interesting? Because that's just what it is. Interesting. Nish seemed to get a kick out of it, and Rolo had a good time telling it, so much so that he worked up a good sweat. And Nish actually offers him a bottle of water, which he thanks her for and takes, because the AC still isn't working. He of course wishes that he could do something about it, but it doesn't stop Nish from asking more questions, as she wonders why exactly he left the medtech field. And after Rolo finishes off the bottle of water, he then explains to her that he continued after Dawson, as a lot has happened since then with the progression of all the technology. A lot of it actually starting with that prototype that Dawson had. They were able to rework it until they could completely move someone's consciousness into something that we now know as a cookie from the last episode, which is White Christmas. It's right up here. Check it out. It's right. Oh, it's right there. Though in between having entire VR immersive scapes and Dawson, there was something simpler that Rolo was also a part of. Nish, of course, has questions, which honestly surprises Rolo, as most visitors just don't ask that many, and she reminds him that her car's still charging. So she's just here, and it's with that Rolo leads her over to another display case where a stuffed monkey sits inside. And Nish doesn't really know what to say, so she simply calls it cute.
Actually, one of the saddest things in the whole place.
And the reason that this episode is something special is we're not only getting multiple stories throughout this episode, but they're all connected, inside and outside of this episode. But we'll come back to that thought at the very end. Because it can't be. It doesn't make any sense for it to all be connected. What about the werewolves? What about all the demons? What about the entire layered multiverse? None of that works within everything. It can't all be connected because that makes everything so confusing. You're telling me there's also werewolves? The story behind this very sad criminological artifact is one of a relationship between a man named Jack and a woman named Carrie. Nish guessed Jill, like Jack and Jill. Ha ha ha. A relationship like one that, as Rolo puts it, where you can't get the other person out of your mind. And Nish understands, I think we all do, and it all started at a Halloween party, which then led to Carrie getting pregnant and then the two of them becoming three with a little boy named Parker. And just one day they decided to take a walk in the park and have a cute little family outing, a perfect day for a picture to remember it all by, as Jack picks up Parker from the stroller and Carrie steps back to get a clearer shot of them both with her phone.
Carrie gets hit by a truck.
And she ends up in a place that we already know, St. Juniper's. Years pass with her being in a comatose state. Jack visits as much as he can, and she never wakes up. Though being here means that some test will be ran, as they find that the comm box works with her. It's a rather basic device compared to the other stuff that they have now and the other stuff that we've seen throughout the rest of the show, but it's essentially just a little communication device that has two lights, one green for yes and one red light for no, so Carrie can at least somewhat communicate with Jack. And it's Jack's dedication to always visiting and doing his best to communicate with Carrie that catches the attention of Mr. Rolo Haynes. With a brief introduction and a not so subtle recommendation of a new experiment that could be and is described as miraculous, is then offered to Jack and Carrie. In the simplest of terms, they would remove Carrie's consciousness from her body and then place her into the mind of Jack. So she would essentially become a passenger of sorts, a lot like Get Out, allowing for Carrie to not only see and speak with Jack, but to also feel everything he feels. Not only would she be able to taste food again or have conversations with Jack, but she would be able to feel a hug from their son again. That is all that it takes for her to agree to the whole thing, as Rolo didn't just say all of this to Jack alone in the hallway, but instead he sits down in Carrie's room where she can hear the whole thing and use the comm box to let them both know that she is for this.
Carrie's done her thinking. How about you?
Now, it should be clear that Rolo knows what he is doing, but it also seems like he knows more than he lets on without giving a chance for anyone to question him, as The moment he calls Parker, their son, by name, Jack becomes suspicious of how he knows that information, but is cut off by Carrie signaling that she does want to go through with this. Rolo's whole job is to recruit people for these experiments here at St. Juniper. He is a salesman whose product is free and side effects unknown and often unmentioned. Though all that is known right now is that they can move Carrie into Jack's mind and then she will get this passenger experience, with her body then being disposed of and marked for organ donation within the hospital. And that is exactly what they do, and everything goes according to plan. Carrie can see, hear, speak with, and even speak to other people through Jack if he relays the message, as well as feel everything that he can feel, from the weight and the taste of an apple to a hug from their son, who she has not seen since that fateful day that everything changed.
I feel him. I really feel him.
A very sweet moment, but Nish reminds him that this is the moment where the butt comes in. And though it is heartwarming, Rolo wonders, how long can this happiness realistically last? As we then see the slow deterioration of the never-ending relationship between Jack and Carrie. She's always there, ever experiencing everything he experiences, leading to an experience unlike anything anyone else has ever experienced. And it begins small, with Carrie complaining about how slow he reads, as he's also reading a graphic novel from the events of the episode 15 Million Merits in season 1, to then later questioning why Jack doesn't wash their hands as he leaves the bathroom. These little things slowly build up over time until they are having full-on arguments between each other, or more so within Jack. As one day at breakfast, a tablet is playing more news about the murder of Denise Stockley, and the details of such have Carrie calling for it to be turned off since Parker is in the room. But Jack says that it's just fine, he's not even paying attention after all. It's here that Parker pushes his cup off of the table, leading to Jack to snap at him, and then Carrie to snap at Jack, and then for them to go back and forth even more. But for a moment, we see all of this from Parker's perspective, and it's just his father yelling at himself in this one-sided argument. Parker is only 4, and all of this is already difficult enough to understand, so there's no telling how he will attempt to process it all. Whether it's this realization or just the irritation of having this ever-present backseat driver, Jack makes a visit to Rolo, so they can maybe find a solution to all of their problems.
Maybe if you had the ability to place Carrie on pause.
Then their relationship would not feel so strained. Both of them would at least get a break from each other for a little bit. Or that's the idea anyway. As with the simple click of a button on Jack's phone, Carrie would just not be for a little while. Jack doesn't even make it out of the hospital before giving this a try, and just like that, Carrie is no longer mad at him for looking at another woman in the elevator. She's just gone. And for Carrie, though, it isn't like it all just goes dark for her and she just sits around and waits for Jack to restart or whatever. It's not like a shutter comes down and then they're separated and she gets to be alone for a little while. For her, it's as though no time passed at all. From the moment that Jack paused her and then turned her back on, it was nearly instant for Carrie. But from the looks of the apartment and all of the decorations around, it must have been much longer.
Halloween's months from now.
Actually, it's today.
2 months have gone just like that. Jack placed her on pause and just forgot. He does what he can to try to make it up to her, but all she wants is just a hug from Parker and to remind Parker that she loves him. This whole scene is both really sad and awkward all at the same time. Carrie is crying from realizing that she just missed out on even more time with her son, and Jack is struggling to relay the idea that his mom is now back, but also not, to Parker. All of this confusion leads them to working out a new schedule, one where Carrie would be on pause throughout the week, and then would be able to spend the weekends with Parker and Jack as a family again. Of sorts. Everything works for a while until a new neighbor moves in next door, Emily. All it takes is for Jack and Parker to cross paths with Emily just as they're headed to the park one day, and Carrie immediately becomes irritated with Jack for speaking with her because she can also feel all of the same feelings that he has going on within himself as he speaks to Emily. And he tries to play it off, but in the end, the easiest thing for him to do is just to put her on pause so he isn't arguing with himself in front of their son. Eventually, Jack and Emily do begin to date, and after enough time, their relationship grows into this all the time thing instead of just during the week. And I know that everything is happening very fast, nearly as fast as the waking experience that Carrie has had since her accident. But for Jack and Parker, that was close to 5 years ago now. None of it is easy, but Jack is trying his best to continue on with him and his son's life.
Can't you just be happy for us?
No, Jack. Weirdly enough, I can't.
It makes sense why, and it also makes all of this more complicated, as Carrie doesn't want anyone moving in on her family, and Emily doesn't like seeing how difficult all of this is on Jack. So they go back to Rolo to discuss a new course of action. This is where the stuffed animal comes in, as it is built with its own consciousness center. It has a camera for one of its eyes so it's able to see. It also has a haptic feedback sensor, so if Parker were to hug the doll, she would be able to feel it. And luckily, she would also be able to speak, in a way. This time, instead of the two lights that she used to signal yes or no, she would have two simple phrases to speak through. Monkey loves you, and monkey needs a hug. It's a big decision, of course, and one that Jack would like more time to think about, but Emily believes that it's a good idea. And Rolo again uses the same line that he did that started all of this. She's done her thinking. How about you? The transfer was fast and without issue. Carrie was on pause for the entire thing anyway and had no idea what had happened until the moment that Parker was given the monkey as a gift. Of course, this is all a lot for Carrie to take in, but the craziest thing is how no one knows what she is thinking now. Jack can no longer hear her, so even with her demands to place her back into Jack's mind, Jack just continues to explain why this gift is so special to Parker. Jack says that it is something Mom wanted him to have, and that anytime Parker hugs it, Mom will know, as well as the monkey even being able to speak, which it begins to do right as Carrie discovers her limited communication with the rest of the world and immediately begins spamming both as much as she possibly can.
We can still have you right. That what you want?
No, she doesn't, and Carrie, in the only way that she can, promises to be a good toy for Parker, with a monkey loves you for yes. Again, it works for a while, but just as any kid, Parker becomes tired of his new toy, and Carrie gets left behind as she watches the rest of her family move on without her. But this museum is centered around crime-related artifacts, and Nish doesn't understand what crime would have happened for the monkey to have ended up here. That's the thing, though. The monkey is the crime. The UN ruled that it is illegal to move a human's consciousness into such a limited format. You must be able to express 5 emotions to be considered humane, though it is a bit of a stretch to call any of what happened with Carrie humane.
All right, Carrie.
Monkey needs a hug.
She's still in there.
Because it's also illegal to delete her. So this is just the rest of her existence. And it's here that we then learn that this is what led Rolo here, after the ACLU found out about his little experiment. Here, where the AC still isn't working, and Rolo claims that it is now time for Nish to witness the main attraction behind the curtain. Nish places Carrie back within the case and follows a sweaty Rolo to see Clayton Lee, the Weather Girl killer, the man who was convicted of the murder of Denise Stockley, the same murder that we have heard about in the background of both the other stories. Though Clayton isn't the same as what he was back in life, because within this makeshift cell, he is just a projection of his consciousness. One that was basically recruited by Rolo even after he was let go. He claims that his original plan for this entire museum was to collect celebrity consciousnesses after death, and open up essentially a living wax museum full of, well, anyone he could probably get, but celebrities have a lot of issues and paperwork to deal with.
But convicted killers? It's a different story.
We get to see Rolo going to visit Clayton Lee in prison. All Clayton knows is that Rolo is in technology, and asks right away if he could look into the whole DNA thing to prove that it wasn't him. Rolo claims that that is a possibility, but it isn't the reason that he's here. Instead, he's here for... Clayton attempts to leave, but Rolo really is a good salesman. As with one mention at how he can help Clayton's family, it stops him in his tracks. You see, the idea was that Clayton would sign over the rights to his digital self. And then if he does end up going to the chair without receiving a pardon, his digital self would become an attraction at Rolo's museum, where a portion of the money made would then be sent to Clayton's family for as long as this version of Clayton exists within this museum. It's an interesting proposition that makes Nish ask how Clayton's family felt about it, but according to Rolo, they didn't care. As we then see Clayton's wife, Angelica Lee, and how against this whole idea she is. But Clayton assures her that he believes his pardon will come through, and even if not, at least they will be taken care of from here on.
This could be a good thing.
The pardon never came, and in the words of Rolo, the day Clayton Lee received the chair was a great day for justice. Even though Nish doesn't sound so sure, there was a whole documentary afterwards and other evidence pointing away from Clayton, including some potential DNA tampering, but none of that changed the fact that Clayton Lee was executed by way of electrocution. Though just before, Rolo was there to download his entire consciousness all the way through his final moments, so he could then be placed within this cell and forced to live the same experience and the same pain over and over and over and over again.
2, 1.
Rolo knows what best sells tickets. Yes, it is one thing to have a convicted killer walking around in a cell, but to be able to pull the lever yourself, that gets people in the door. The screams of his simulated consciousness experiencing true pain, all based on the groundwork that was laid by Dawson's implant. That got people's attention, and that made Rolo a lot of money. The only rule is to not let the electric shock go for more than 15 seconds. 10 is the limit to keep everything the same, but 15 would completely wipe the digital synapses within Clayton's now simulated consciousness, meaning that he would just no longer be. And I'm sure that that's something that he thought about many times over, as it didn't matter how much he begged everyone that came through. They always pulled the lever. All of them wanted to feel the power and to force him through that pain again and again. But the torture Clayton faced didn't end there, as Rolo had also set up something a little special for anyone who did flip the switch. Souvenirs, little keychains with a forever screaming copied consciousness of Clayton in agony for their enjoyment. Just a little reminder and a way of advertisement to anyone else that asks about it. You can hear the mix of hate and excitement within Rolo's voice as he tells all of this to Nish, until speaking and breathing become difficult for him.
Take a seat if it makes it easier.
Nish pulls up a chair and tells him to sit down. Her British accent has now left her as she begins to call out his story for missing details. Clayton's family did care. His wife had actually gone out and started a whole protest that had some momentum behind it and had gotten many people involved, but eventually the protesters also lost interest and moved on to the next viral miscarriage of justice that they could hang a hashtag off of. This is both a quote from Nish and from the episode Hated in the Nation. Thankfully, though, all of the outrage did hurt the business here. It was no longer a typical tourist stop, but just a place for freaks and sadists to stop to get their kicks. And that crowd wasn't big enough to keep the doors open, not with how things normally functioned, which is why when the offer came for Rolo to allow one visitor in particular to go over the time limit a couple of seconds, he took the offer and the envelope of cash, even if it meant that Clayton would never be the same afterwards. Not dead, but hardly alive, a state that barely anyone would have even wanted to pull the lever anymore. So even fewer people came to visit. But eventually someone did. Someone important came to see what Rolo had done to her husband.
God knows if he even recognized her. God knows if he even recognizes me.
A little bit of Nish's father may still be in there, but there is no way of telling. He lifts his hand to rest against the glass opposite of hers, keeping his eyes down the whole time, like that of a docile animal, drooling without thought and unresponsive to Nish wishing him a happy birthday. This is the side that always seemed to be skipped over in Rolo's stories, as we see the effect that witnessing the state of Clayton had on both Nish and Angelica, her mother. It's painful, and it was that pushed her mother over the edge as she lost all hope of ever being able to clear Clayton's name. A bottle of pills and a bottle of vodka left Nish without any living parents and having to be the one to find her mother. That is why she is here, having tracked down and found Mr. Rolo Haynes here in his museum with his fancy yet easy to hack digital AC.
Never accept drinks from strangers.
Nish came here with a purpose and a plan, starting with the stalling of the AC so it would then become hot, to the point that Rolo would be more likely to drink the offered poisoned water from Nish. From then, it was all just a matter of time before he was just like that of Senator Whitley, but giving enough time for Nish to download his consciousness just before death, so she could then upload him as a passenger within what was left over of her father's consciousness, meaning that Rolo was now completely aware but also helpless to do anything. The reason Nish did all of this was to trap Rolo here forever and to give him a taste of his own medicine, as he will be able to feel everything her father does at the moment that Nish flips the switch and lets it run past the 15-second mark to finally put her father Clayton Lee out of his misery. All while Nish and Carrie watch it all happen and then wait patiently for their eternally suffering souvenir copy of Rolo Haynes.
Hi, Daddy.
Just like that, after 15 seconds, the digital Clayton Lee is wiped from existence, along with the version of Rolo trapped inside. All that is now left is the screaming copy of Rolo on the keychain, as Nish then picks up Carrie and sets off to retrieve her device that she used to stall the AC, and then lets it short out, starting a fire that will surely burn down the Black Museum. Carrie then thanks Nish in the only way that she can by saying, "Monkey loves you," while they then load up in Nish's car, where she immediately hangs the new keychain on her mirror and then positions it to where she can see herself, or better yet, to where her passenger can see her.
How'd I do, Mom?
Just great, honey.
Nish's mother says that she is proud of her with the biggest smile across her face, as Nish then puts on her sunglasses and they leave the museum to burn to the ground. This final twist and just how every single story works together within the episode is all amazing, and overall, for the rating of the twist, I give it a 98 out of 100, putting it right behind White Christmas. But while this twist is a very high rating, there's something more here in this episode. As in the last two episodes that I've covered, I've pointed out that this is an anthology series, but it just has some overlapping themes that lead to little Easter eggs that are fun to point out from previous episodes, right? Like, it's always cool to see something from somewhere else and go, hey, that's familiar, that's awesome. It's cool that they also included it over here, and the way that it all works within the show, just like any good anthology series, as I said in the last episode. But this is no longer just Easter eggs here. There are full-on 10 other episodes and even more in the background that are not just hinted at, but are part of the story within the Black Museum. This would all be really neat, knowing that all the episodes have slowly built on one another within this universe as the technology develops, but that's the issue. If this whole series was all just technology, everything would be completely fine, but Season 6 messes everything up. The series goes from being about cool technology and how it's used in many different ways throughout society, and then we find out that werewolves are just a thing. What? Huh? Because there's an entire season that's just different. But if they're all connected, then it's all a part of the series. That means the entire world ended at one point in Demon 79. How does that work? Demons are a thing within this universe, as well as werewolves, and there's like an entire multi-layered consciousness thing going on within the like, how does all of that work? I don't know. I don't know. I need the full story. I have to figure it out. The twist here is good, but the twist that it reveals for the entire show all being interconnected, it doesn't make sense. How does that work? Am I missing something from other episodes? Is this just a part of its own thing that it can do that? What? I don't know what to do with this information yet. I don't know. But if you want me to figure out how all of this works together, let me know. Until then, I'll wait until I get the full story so I can know what is happening here in Black Mirror. Seriously, thank you for watching to this point, and thanks to all the channel members for helping me to make all of this possible. That's the reason that they get their own version of each video. It's the same video, just no ads, so they can enjoy the whole thing all the way through without any interruptions. I have so many other videos planned, and I'm also currently working on many more episodes, and doing the math, I have already recorded more hours of footage this year than what I posted in the last 2 years. So, whole bunch of stuff on the way. Just give me some time. I really am just glad to be here, and I'm so glad that you are here, which is why I hope that you would take my hand, have an extra blessed day, so I can see you in the next one.